Good evening, everybody. We got a show for you. Me and Sam in the room. Weird weekend. That Fort Creek Brewers Fest that we've been talking about is tomorrow for us. It'll be yesterday for you guys. But we're not going to have regularly scheduled. Our normal recording time is otherwise occupied by other events, so we're not going to be able to do that. Just to get it out there, you missed a great time at Fort Creek Brewers Fest. It was sponsored by eBay Lounge and Union Jacks. You should go check them out at 126 South North Shore Drive. They're good people. They do good things. If you're into a cool bar to hang out with at, or a great vape shop to get your beer from, those are the people to see it. Weird off day. I'm doing this backwards. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Check out our website at almostagreement.com. While you're there, you can get all the episodes or on your favorite podcast provider. Please give shares, all those fun things that you're supposed to do to get the word out. Anyway, I'm all bent out of shape about this Tanner Holt getting knocked out for being a racist asshole.
Bent out of shape.
I want to be clear that he's a racist asshole, and that's not okay. But so if you guys hadn't heard the story, it was last weekend, I guess, is when it happened, that this Tanner individual was at a wedding reception, was being a racist dick, and got knocked out by a black guy that was at the reception with him. Happens that this Tanner individual is a KPD officer, which is neither here nor there, but my issue with it is, if we're going to have a conversation about it, that's fine. But the question I have, I guess, the issue I take with it is that we're praising an assault. Like, we're celebrating that somebody was assaulted. I don't think it's cool to say what he said, but is that the world we live in right now? Is that it's cool to assault people if it's for the right, quote, reason?
It's not cool, but I mean, it's not that uncommon. I mean, you hear about bar fights. It's like, you insulted my lady, or you insulted my man, and all of a sudden a fight breaks out.
Right, I agree with that. But it's still assault.
I agree. Some people just have softer feelings, or more quicker to resort to violence as a means to an end.
Are you going to hear a chorus of praise for you assaulting some guy for talking bad to your lady? That's the problem.
By a select few, but not the right people now.
Right. And it's like I guess a better way to kind of break down the issue that I'm having with it is, like, is this going to fix the core problem at play? Is this going to un-racist people? Are they going to be less racist because they might get punched in the mouth? I doubt it. I don't think that's going to be a solution for it. Now, again, the whole cop being the day job thing is a whole separate side of the conversation.
Right.
There's a problem with KPD that they didn't figure this out sooner. Or the big question at hand is, did they know that he had this viewpoint, but he continued to do the job? Which, with KPD right now and their ability to keep to hire and retain officers, they might have known and had to be like, look, we got to deal with it because we don't have enough bodies, for lack of a better word. So we got to deal with it.
Have they had people quitting?
I mean, they're having a hard time keeping. They're having more turnover than historically normal and shit like that. They're year in and year out, I think it was 30 short of their desired number. Whatever that, I don't know what the metric is to make that number exist, but there's a number. Again, from my from my Spangler episode, the Department of Justice puts out a report on different locations and municipalities and how many officers should be there. And I know the sheriff's office is short, 15 or 13 or 12. I can't remember what he said because he actually changed his number in the conversation. But either way, I mean, they're short officers. And so maybe they did know, and they were like, well, we can either be one more short, or we know he has these tendencies, but it's not showing on the job, so we let it go. I don't know.
I don't think that many people are out and out. If they have those kind of the bigotry in them,
Right.
They're not exactly that blatant about it all the time.
Like, I'm going to go out full devil's advocate on this one. I'm going to go on a limb, and in his drunken mind, he probably thought he was being funny. Not racist, but being funny.
Okay.
That's my guess. I don't, again, this is devil's advocate. I have zero real insight. I bet you.
I don't see that guess.
I would guess that he thought he was being funny, and he was too drunk to realize that he was actually being a fucking asshole. I've been that drunk.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I've been that drunk where I've been like, oh, blah, 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 and then the day, 2 or 3 days later, somebody's like, do you realize you said this to that person? Why did I say that? Well, you thought it was hilarious at the time. Oh. And then I called somebody, if it mattered, I'd call them and apologize or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, right. Because again, according to the article, that the WATE article that like started this whole conversation for me, was he was clearly intoxicated. A number of people made reference to, like, multiple witnesses that made reference to, yes, he said the racial things, but also said he was drunk as shit.
Does that excuse it?
No, but it also doesn't make it okay for him to be assaulted either.
I agree.
I mean, but again, I guess my trying to give the benefit of the doubt to a multitude of issues that are at play here. Was KPD aware that he had racial tendencies? Does he actually have racial tendencies, or is he just being a stupid drunk? And so and again, you brought it up when we were getting set up. Is Gwen McKenzie made some statement about how she doesn't trust the leadership in KPD for their racial issues. Kid Cannon says she does. Poor Chief Thomas gets to be the first female, but she's not intersectional enough to get excused for other things and stuff like that. And so it's a weird, I don't know. It's just it's a weird story to me that, and again, to go back and put it in full context, this person that I've friended on Facebook, and it's through the podcast, had posted it with a way to go Tanner with the crying laughing face, and then all the comment section is how much he deserved it. And it's like, I get it, but there's a difference in saying something stupid and punching somebody in the face. One's a crime and one isn't. At least that's how things are supposed to be. And so I don't like the idea that we're celebrating assault. And so again, I put in here on the I decided I was going to comment on it because I was feeling dickish. And so I said, cool. So we're celebrating assault. That's fun. Let me know the next issue that applies. I want to hit somebody. Just need an excuse to be celebrated for doing it. And then I got reprimanded by the original poster because she doesn't know me personally and doesn't know why we're friends on Facebook, and basically alluded that she was going to unfriend me for my comment because I'm the only one in the comment stream that said anything adverse to he deserved it.
Was it just on her page, or did she post it to?
I mean, this was her share of it. She shared she shared the WATE article, so this comment thread is only through her friends.
Gotcha. Which
I'm included in, and I don't remember why. I assume that she has a bunch of friends that are other political active people that I've had on the show. I was like, oh, this person's friends with 8 people that are all podcast style friends. I should friend them because that helps promote the show. And so, to Elizabeth Bean, I apologize. I didn't mean to ruffle your Facebook feathers, but
I saw a mutual friend.
Yeah, I mean, through the show, I friended a lot of people. So I got this cool koozie from Jimmy J.J. Jones from the parade.
Or from the former teacher. Or current teacher.
Stephen Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. His was making a joke about how you put him and some other person together and it makes a good, funny joke. But again, it's still a problem. I mean, I'm not okay with a cop who's openly racist being on the force. I'm not okay with that at all. But I'm also not okay with people being assaulted for any reason. Unless it's in some sort of defensive situation where it's like, well, this guy was coming and he's going to do something and I had to do something to stop him. And that thing I had to do to stop him was punch him in the mouth.
Right.
Outside of that, I can't, there's no excuse. I don't care what the fuck you say. There's no excuse for an assault. It's a crime. And that's why it's a crime. And then there's no charges. And again, we hypothesized this in the green room, on, Mr. Tanner decided he wasn't pressing charges for being assaulted, probably because it's going to cause problems with his job, which it's too late now. He's fucked anyway. So
it may still. I don't know.
Again,
it's a pretty new story.
I don't know. It's just the premise that we're celebrating an assault bothers me.
All right.
I don't care what the rationalization for it is, unless it's unless Bill Cosby is in my house and we're having some cocktails and I see him putting some shit in a drink. Then I'm okay with an assault. I mean, it's stupid. Like that's not the America we're supposed to live in.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
There's a difference between words and actions. And again, it brings up questions. No doubt, it brings up questions that we have KPD officers that are using these kind of words. It brings up questions on whether he's making actions on this style of word usage in his job, because that's a problem. But it does not excuse an assault.
I agree.
Okay. Good. I'm not crazy.
We're not almost in agreement.
Julian Assange. Have you seen the update on that one?
I just read about it. Some about the extradition. I guess the U.S.
They're still trying, yeah.
Well, the U.S. apparently approved for him to be extradited to Australia. Well, I guess that's where the trial would have been happening.
No, it's here. He's extradited here, but if he is convicted, he can serve his time in Australia. Yeah. That's a second weird grossism about what's going on. But the first one, the big revelation that's happened last week, is that like the key witness is a known pedophile, was facing charges for a bunch of other stuff, including a fraud charge against WikiLeaks that he was brought in on, and that's when he flipped and became the lead witness against Julian Assange. And so he's this core witness, and then he has come out publicly and stated, "No, I made all that shit up because they told me if I pushed things to him, they'd leave me alone for what I did." And apparently, he became state's evidence. He was a paid informant, or not a paid informant, but he was an informant to the FBI or whatever.
Yeah.
To the level that he went out and continued committing his style of crimes, which he was excused for as long as he was providing evidence against Assange. So basically,
past crimes, or
no, for past crimes, but as well as between the period of when he testified against Assange and now, he has committed further crimes that have been excused because of the agreement for testifying against Assange in the first place.
Yeah, well, little I read didn't mention anything about that. It was more just about extradition and
right. And so,
how originally when they wanted to put the trial on here, there was a British judge that was unsure of what his treatment would be if he were to serve his time in
basically,
the U.S.
The British judge says the U.S. prison system is cruel and unusual punishment, and I'm not going to put a guy into that. To which the U.S. Department of
he's not going to go into the Supermax in Denver, or I can't remember the name. Is it Leavenworth's in Colorado?
I don't remember.
I think Leavenworth is a Supermax.
But if he's convicted, so during trial, during the appeals process, until this whole thing is done, he will be in the States and he will be in the U.S. federal penal system.
I thought some of the stories
and
coming out.
And if he survives all that with the conviction, then he will get shipped off to Australia to serve out the remainder of his sentence. Which he won't.
I just thought there were funny stories coming out of him being homebound or whatever. Was it the Ecuadorian consulate in London?
He's been all over different places.
It sounded like he had cats and wasn't picking up after the cats. Because they kept trying to find these reasons to kick him out. Apparently, his place was a mess, but he wasn't cleaning up, I guess, all the cat shit from his animals. And they were like, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing? We've been safe harboring you for 2 or 3 years. Just fucking pick up after yourself."
Right. I don't know. And his crime is, as far as I can tell, his crime is sharing information that was leaked by somebody else, which apparently is not a crime, technically.
I don't know.
I was listening to...
don't even remember what all... And it was really the WikiLeaks or whatever.
Right. It's the big one, the one that kind of changed the game was the the DNC emails about Hillary Clinton and Bernie back in the 2016 election.
Was that his big drop?
That was the one that it went from, hey, this guy's kind of fun and cool, to all of a sudden, oh, fuck no, this is not okay anymore. That was the DNC was clearly colluding against a running candidate for another one.
Was he involved in the Panama Papers too?
He's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one's crazy to me. I mean, it's just like I don't. It doesn't like I can't. I don't know. Again, maybe it's.
It goes to the argument of the whole kind of like whistleblower type thing, to where, with Snowden or whatever, you're letting out national secrets. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, it's stuff that maybe public should know, but
right. These are things that shouldn't be happening.
It's kind of in that gray area,
right? This shouldn't be happening. What else is going on? What else did I text you? You said we were going to talk about. There's some July 6th shit coming out.
I just asked you what you wanted to talk about.
I'm not talking
July
about
6th stuff.
Not July 6th, January 6th.
January 6th stuff. I saw 2 Seattle police officers got indicted today in Seattle.
Oh, that's what. So yeah,
for being there.
There was a DC, whatever their, I guess DC. Police department undercover agent that was there.
Metro Police.
But he was undercover with one of the groups that was there. And so it brings up the two basic questions. It's like, why was he there? Because he was there following as part of a group because that was his job. So if he was there, why wasn't that information passed on to stop this event from happening?
Well, there were a lot of warnings leading up to it. That's kind of been the whole kind of kerfuffle as to who didn't follow these warnings, because there were warnings, a month or two prior.
Right. That this was that there were people seriously going to go and sit on desks.
There were intelligence reports that say, hey, we're hearing all this chatter of there's a lot of people that are coming.
Right, but we got a CI. I'm not a CI. We have an undercover agent that's there that has infiltrated one of these groups, which are, again, are we seriously thinking that the NSA or the FBI or the CIA, for that matter, doesn't have guys in too to some of these larger groups that are part of this?
It's not out of the realm of possibility
that they don't have any. That with all the chatter, they don't have anybody that's tried to that's infiltrated these groups that are part of it.
No, I'm saying that it's definitely a possibility. Right. Yeah,
that's the weirdest to me. Like, so it goes to the Tucker thing. The Tucker Carlson thing is I guess that's the start of the conversation.
Okay,
is that the Tucker Carlson saying the NSA spying on him thing, because and trying to get him kicked off the air or whatever. Which
all I can read. I went on the Fox News website today. Nobody else on Fox is talking about this. I think that's a little telling to me. Going back to Snowden, as you brought up earlier, it's like I would assume they are at some level, and like their statement in response to the episode that he did it on was like he's not a target. He's never been a target. Right.
But by the rules at play, he can be an incidental. There's incidental information gathering. If you were a Russian national and I called you to be on the show,
right, and they were already listening,
they were listening to you, they're going to hear me,
right,
and that's the incidental whatever. Which apparently Tucker's been trying to get Putin on the show,
right,
and so, but apparently by the rules at play. If that were the case, not that I'm media or whatever,
to be masked or whatever,
right? I would be masked as
Subject
U.S.
one
Media One,
yeah.
And so the unmasking is one of the things in play. There's like how does anybody know that Tucker is the person talking to this person? And so again, it's like one of those, it seems outrageous, but it's not. It's really not outrageous to claim, and it's probably true. The claim is there nefarious intent, or is it just picked up because of the game that's at play? Are we okay with the game that's at play? That's the real question.
Yeah. A little I read, it was like some guy that he knew that I guess Tucker knows and had been emailing with or whatever, American citizen, was his quote-unquote whistleblower. that gave him the information. I guess it emailed him like, "Hey, the NSA is listening to you," or whatever.
Right. But
I don't know.
Read an email. I mean, that was the Tucker thing. Was that whoever's told him that the NSA was watching you,
right?
And then read an email.
I think he had him on the show. I don't like Tucker at all. I used to think he was an okay guy, but I saw a little clip pop up when I was trying to just read the story.
It's a Fox News guy that hates war. That's at least something. Like he gets on the war issue on the right side of the war issue. I like that about him.
Okay.
I'm just saying. He's not perfect, but
I think he's a piece of shit, but whatever.
Okay. So, who's your favorite national news source?
I don't have a national news source
that you trust that's not selling you bullshit. They all suck? I'll take that. That's a good answer.
I'm a fan of Associated Press, Reuters.
Yeah.
I'll try to stick with those a little more. Those are actually, I guess, international.
Right.
But they've got reporters all throughout the world.
I meant to do it tonight because I can't remember who said it and where I heard it, but it was like, watch the news. Actually, don't watch the news. Just have the news on, but take notes on who the advertisers are.
Yeah.
And the one that like blows my fucking mind is Boeing. I made mention on the show before. I remember watching NBC Nightly News at 7 or 6:30, and watch the news or whatever. It's like a fucking Cialis ad and some, it's a bunch of pharmaceutical ads, and you get the local chunk in there, and then Boeing. Not American Airlines, not Delta, not people that use Boeing jets to fly from here to there or whatever, but Boeing. And I'm thinking to myself, who the fuck is watching Nightly News thinking, I need to buy a jet? And then it goes, why would Boeing advertise on NBC Nightly News? Why would Lockheed Martin? Because that's another one I've seen on NBC Nightly News. Why would Lockheed Martin?
What?
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of those, but I don't watch it either.
I'm just saying, why would you advertise on there? If you're Lockheed Martin, why are you advertising on NBC Nightly News?
I assume they do other stuff other than airplanes, right? Boeing and Lockheed Martin.
Guns
they make
and missiles
engines
and all sorts of cool things that kill people.
Oh, John Oliver had a great skit that was talking about that with the whole...
Side note, Lockheed Martin, I will take your money. Please advertise with us, and I will say nice things about you on the show.
We'll take an airplane, please.
Yeah, so we can fly up to fucking Wyoming and hunt elk and shit. That goes back to our conversation about we need sponsors that help us with our hunting game.
Yeah, good thing on sponsored content, and how it was getting harder, like you were saying, to figure out like what segments were sponsored content. We did one. They actually got a spokesperson that went on to a few, like, I think they were just like little regional shows, but like regional news shows. And it was this kind of like fur-looking blanket, but it was apparently supposed to help like whenever it was a woman's that time of the month. And she like gave all these like crazy, stupid, like pretty obviously fake, like scientific stuff. They're like, oh, it helps oxygenation and blah 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 blah. And it was, that show's like health expert and like, oh, that sounds wonderful, and how basically you can, get these shows, to kind of show your product, and they'll totally like back you on it, even though you're just talking crazy, stupid bullshit.
Right.
It just made up like this fake blanket.
But I mean,
but it was really hard to find that, like, that little health ad that's selling this new product, that's getting it out to the market is sponsored by, some other kind of advertiser or a certain company.
Right. Yeah, it's a weird...
it's like right at the very end of things you might see, like, brought to you by blah, 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 Acme Company.
Yeah, and it's one of those, like, we don't...
Like, are we watching the news or am I watching a commercial?
Right. And 9 times out of 10, you're watching commercials. You're watching commercials with weather and maybe some sports.
I mean, that's kind of been the downfall of a lot of media. I mean, I don't know how else they make money other than to sell advertising. So they're kind of like stuck in that catch-22. They can't stay afloat if they're not doing it.
Right, but it's supposed to be...
It's supposed to be news.
Well, it's supposed to be news, and people are willing to watch the ads because of the news you provide.
Right.
Not, you're going to provide the news that your ads are providing. It's the other way around, and that's what's shifted over time. And I understand why it shifts over time. But, it's just, it's gross. It sucks. And, and honestly, the model's real. The model for Real News is Real. Compass is the local example.
Right.
They are a functional news source. They're not big enough to cover enough things that they need to cover to do what they really need to do, but they're right on the edge of it. They're functional. They're full-time. They're not... They don't advertise, and so they don't have that problem. To me, they're a little bit... There's a little bit of bias that comes out of the two writers, and I'm not mad at them for it. And it's just there, and I'm not mad at them for that, but it's just there. But that bias is their bias as individuals, not their bias because Pilot is their sponsor. And so I'll take a personal bias versus an advertiser bias any day of the week. And so but the model's there and it works. People do it and they get away with it. The problem is that major media is doing everything in their power to minimize alternative media, for lack of a better word, all the different podcasts that people listen to that aren't in the as part of the official game that people don't like.
That's the kind of, I guess, again, kind of that same logic, like I was saying, with more news being more media or digitally driven. It's all about the clicks. How long you can keep somebody on the website to read a story.
Said, though,
how many little pop-up ads you can have come in there.
But I think the reality is that there are real, good, solid, functional, at least openly biased. They're not trying to hide their biases. Ben Shapiro is very clearly openly biased, but he's very clear and honest about what he's presenting. And then every time he talks about it past that,
he's good about throwing in those little plugs.
Right. But he does what he does on his show is he's like, here's the story. Here's how I feel about the story. And so, but at least the story is square in the story, and then it's his opinion following the story. It's not, here's the story in the lens of Ben Shapiro. It's, here's the story, and now here's Ben's lens. Same thing with the Jimmy Dore Show. Jimmy Dore Show is, here's the story. Here's my lens on the story, but it's clear and it's there and it's known and it's open, and I'm really getting into the Crystal Ball and Sager Show. They're kind of on either side of the game.
So both of them left the hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're on either side of the game together. They both have their own tendencies and they both tend to be on the opposite, but not like the extreme opposite, but they're kind of center left, center right as individuals, but they do a really good show and they present it and they do really well on it.
Which is which?
Crystal's the more left leaning, Sagar's the more right leaning.
Okay.
So White Lady's left. I don't know what Sagar is, but anyway, the point being is that they're open about their biases. They don't try to pretend they're not. They try to present their stories as clear as they can. And they have a huge audience for it. So the appetite's there for real news.
Yeah.
It's just that standard major media has gotten so far over to what they're doing that it's kind of getting to the point of they can't redeem themselves. They don't feel like they could actually go back to real news because people already don't trust them. They feel like their only audience, they feel like they can't survive without their audience. But their audience only exists because they're biased to that audience. And there's no major company that's trying to push that.
Yeah.
And that's the bummer about the major media conversation. And I mean, it's comes down local the same way. I mean, Knox News and the TV stations they have their, they're just tiny little chunks of giant news organizations.
All right.
And
so I think John Oliver pulled out. I think he had literally probably 50 to 75 like local news things that were all owned by like the same, either like Sinclair or Gannett or one of the larger major, and it's pretty much that one company sending out the same story that all of those affiliates are playing that same story. So it was 50, 75 correspondents all like saying the same thing.
Word for word.
Yeah, word for word.
Yeah, there's that YouTube video where they do it, and it's like it's a montage, and it's word for word, like 100 at a time, and they're all saying the same exact phrasing. And it's like, what are we? I mean, and again, it's like how are we supposed to take that as just normal people?
Right.
Like, what are we supposed to think?
Well, most people would never see that or realize it.
Right.
I mean, how many people are watching multiple markets simultaneously?
Right. True. But I'm just saying, like, what is that like? But now that we know this, right?
But how many people know that? That's the thing.
We know that, and that's the question I'm asking.
Okay.
You and I. Now that you and I know this, how are we supposed to take that?
The greater we.
No, just you and I. Me and you in this room right now, and the dog. Rowdy, how do you feel about it? Good answer. I'm saying, now that we know this, you and I in the room.
Yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to think? Like, what am I supposed to think when I turn on Channel 10 News, and I know that Channel 10 and every NBC affiliate in the Southeast is saying the same exact thing?
Hey, take it with any news story. I mean, try to look for multiple sources. See where they got that source from. That's one thing I started to notice looking at different news sites. And actually, that was one thing that kind of turned me on to Associated Press. I kept seeing, Fox News, Newsmax, and all these other things. Started out at the beginning that was from, an AP or from a Reuters source originally, from that reporter. And it was just something they picked up on and kind of reprinted part of and then threw their little bits into it.
Right, which I'm curious about how that works. And that's a legal thing
as
for
long
us
as
to
you
show.
as long as you cite it.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Okay.
Night, buddy. I love you.
Love you.
Well, as soon as with anything that you do, you've got to quote your source where you got that information
Right,
from.
but that defeats the purpose. The whole point of the news is that I don't have to do fucking homework on my news. I shouldn't have to do homework on my news.
Right, the same thing that you would even do, with an ABC reporter. You say, that most reporters are freelance people anyway, so you still got to say, Bob,
I guess
Bob Jones, Sally Smith, or whatever reporting said this and this and this, and that reporter quoted an official saying this and this and this.
Right, but I guess I'm saying is I should be like the business of a news company, whether it's a TV or print. The business is when we run a story, that it's real. That's your pitch. That's why I'm trying to get you to subscribe to my story. I want you to subscribe to my newspaper because you know that when you pick up my paper, I'm going to tell you what's actually going on. But that's not what's actually going on. So again, my point is that as a consumer of news, how am I supposed to take it when I know that I'm being lied to? I agree with you. For my sake of it, yes, go and do some more research. Look into who they're citing. Look into this, that, and the other.
It's all going to depend on what kind of story you're reading.
But
if it's an important story, you want to try to get a few different sides to it.
But I'm just saying, as the machine rolls, where do we go from here? Like, what does that mean for on a societal level as we're trying to, go through the world we live in right now, and as broken as we are, when we all know, maybe not we all know, and that's the bad part, I guess, but we all know that it's curated news to the audience, to keep the audience around. It's not I'm not selling you I'm trying to think of how to word this. I'm selling you a burger.
That's what I was about to do, like a food
I'm selling you a burger, and I'm telling you it's beef.
All right.
But you have heard and you've had strong evidence that it's ostrich. But I keep telling you it's beef. How many times are you going to keep buying that burger, wanting a burger, when it's ostrich? Yeah, I like the ostrich burger, or whatever the fuck a burger is that you're selling, because it's delicious. But you keep telling me it's beef, and I know it's not beef. How long am I going to keep buying that burger before I go, you know what? Just say it's a fucking ostrich burger and get over it. I'm okay with it being an ostrich burger. Just be clear about it.
All right. I was thinking of more, it's healthier to have a varied diet and not eat at the same fast food restaurant all the time. And not get, all your sustenance, all your information from one specific source.
Now, I agree that one source is not, you gotta vary your diet. I get that.
As far as just, news.
My whole point in that is that
that's where you get into confirmation bias. Maybe
right. No, but my whole point in that is that you should still have, as you're varying your sources, each source should be whatever it is they're saying they are. Right. Again, if we're going to stay on this food thing, if I'm going to go to Taco Bell, it should be tacos. I don't know. I'm lost on the analogy of the food analogy, but I agree with you. I agree that. No, I don't know if I do agree actually that you shouldn't have to vary your source because you don't trust a source. You should have to vary your sources because you maybe want some of the opinion parts from some different sources, not that you want the facts from different sources.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mean like facts, because you should be able to assume that the facts are the same, but yeah, you're looking at the different viewpoints on the same.
Right.
The same subject, same, incident that happened.
Right. Like the viewpoint, yes, but because
some will, choose to omit certain parts of the story or whatever to more fit whatever narrative they're writing that story as.
Right, but then that's changing facts for all. I mean, in my opinion.
Well, it's Kellyanne Conway. They got alternative facts.
Well, I mean, but that's just it. Is that like But that's I guess that's the greater political issue at play. Is that.
Well, I mean, in the story, it's hard to put down every single facet of a particular story. You've kind of got to pick the major points, and what major points you decide to focus on and write 3 or 4 sentences on or 2 paragraphs on are going to be to how that writer, how that reporter wants to report on that story, or how his editor wants them to report on that story.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
it's not necessarily changing the story, but it may change like the color of the story.
Yeah, but I just think it's one of those shitty things where it's like the media knows that people don't trust them, and so they double down on why they don't trust them to hold on to the people that are fanatical about the point of view. That's really what's at play. Instead of saying, "Oh, you don't trust us? Well, let us open up and be a little bit more clear about what we're doing." No, we're going to double down on whichever side of the aisle we're on. We're going to double down on Trump is right about everything, Biden's wrong about everything. Or we're going to double down on Biden is the best president we've ever had, and he's going to be the best president in history. And Trump was the most evil thing that ever existed.
I mean, I don't know if people are doubling down on it.
I mean, they're not backing off it at minimum.
I don't know. I mean, Fox's slogan 15 years ago was fair and balanced. I think, all of them at heart do strive to be fair and balanced. But for one reason or another do tend to pick a certain lane to kind of veer off on from time to time.
From time to time is an overstatement, but yes. I know the other one on the list of things is there's advocates urging KUB to end utility disconnections and other stuff for low income, trying to somehow make it more equitable for low income people.
I heard a story similar to that the other day, and I think it may have been local. And apparently there's of course, 311 you call before you dig. But I think there's something called 211 that you can get help for, or economic assistance for different things. I want to say it's local. I don't think it was a national program, but you can call 211 on your phone.
Huh. I mean, again, because
there's a lot of programs out there that help low income people, but a lot of it's just they're not able to advertise to everyone like, hey, we're doing these services. Or it's hard to find those specific services that are out there to help you. But there's lots of programs out there that help all sorts of people. But
I mean, it's an interesting issue to play. I'd love to dig into the idea of why KUB rates are what they are. I can respect the idea that it makes financial sense as far as, KUB is a semi-governmental private industry entity, and that they have a bottom line, and they do the work, and they say, well, we pay X number of dollars for TVA for the power, and then we have to do this, and then we have to make sure we have money set aside for all our employees, as well as money set aside for, projects that we're doing to upgrade, replace, blah blah blah.
Right.
I can respect the premise of that. Like, I could see that there is a number that can be calculated through the cost of doing the job that makes it a reasonable rate. But I'd be curious if anybody's actually looked at it.
There was one aspect that I never thought of, and I want to say it was brought up with the whole kind of freeze that happened in Texas, that a lot of, low-income housing, I guess sort of like kind of single houses themselves are generally, older homes, so they're less efficient, draftier windows, less insulation, so their bills are actually higher, so you're kind of doubling down on a low-income family that also has a highly inefficient house that's still trying to be heated or cooled,
right,
depending on the season.
Right.
Which kind of double fucks them. And I was like, I never really thought about that, but yeah.
Older
shitty homes are having to pay more in utility bills.
Right.
Like, I think that article, one of the women they interviewed said, or maybe it was on average, that a lot of people pay like 1/10 of their yearly income just on utilities.
I don't know. I mean, does that sound like a lot? I don't know. I mean, I would
kind
assume.
of, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, as far as so if you think about it in the sense of
just for heating, electricity,
a needs game. I mean, if we're going to talk about needs, if like I got kids, I didn't put them in bed very well tonight, but I got kids. We have the conversation about I need a new PlayStation. I can't live without a new PlayStation. Then you have to have that fun conversation as a parent about what's the difference in a want and a need.
All right.
Well, if we're going to take our budgets and talk about wants and needs, what's a need on the budget? Heat in the winter, AC in the summer.
Yeah.
That's on the need list. I don't think if we're gonna call it a need, which the article implies that low income families are paying more for their need of power to keep them warm or cold. It's a need. Well, then it makes sense that it's a significant portion of your portion budget. A house is.
I mean, it's a need as far as a priority of something to pay, but I mean, in my personal opinion, I think something that is 1/10 of your yearly income is kind of hard to afford.
But again, it's I don't know. I don't know, to be fully fair. I don't know if I think that's.
I mean, that's more than if you even looked at rent. A whole month's rent wouldn't even pay for your utility bill for that entire year.
Well,
I think I said that kind of wrong.
One of the standard operating household budget is rent is 20 to 25% of your total budget. So let's run the numbers on it. 25% of your total budget's rent. 10% of your total budget is utilities. Gives you 65% for food. What are the other needs that need filled? Like I don't feel like 10% is a big number, to be honest.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I'm not saying you're wrong or right. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to explore the idea here. I don't think that, again, if we're going to have the real needs wants conversation, I need internet. We go back to this. I mean, again, I brought this up from the KUB aspect of things. Is the reason I wanted to bring this up is because it's KUB who low income people can't afford KUB for just the electric part of things, and now we have KUB providing internet for them.
Right.
And so KUB, who can't help people out that can't afford it, as stands for KUB, are now the ones that are supposed to provide for people that couldn't get internet otherwise.
See, I thought there was some restrictions as far as that was at least like water, that you can't completely shut off water to people.
I mean, if there's
under certain circumstances,
right?
Yeah.
If there's kids in the house, the electric is the same thing too. Like, yeah. I mean, all utilities have issues as far as if there's kids in the house. I think it's different with adult only. I guess my point is, I guess this is a broader. I mean, and maybe we could make a whole show out of this. Is it's like, societally, this is one of the weird things that we live in. Is we're a consumer-based society. I get that, but when we go into like low-income kind of conversations on what the needs are and what the wants are and where we sit on these things, it's like I don't know that we have I don't know that we're willing to have an honest conversation about what is worth the effort. Give it, like is trying to force KUB to make exemptions for lower income households. Is that something that we want to spend governmental energy on? Energy is maybe a poor choice of words, or maybe the perfect choice of word. I'm just saying, as far as like, is that something that we as a community feel like, well, maybe Knox County should subsidize to help out low income people in paying their KUB bills? I mean, it sounds okay, but
I mean, I would think in that situation, maybe KUB, if they wanted to do some goodwill, could set them up with some kind of like energy consult. I know. Why would they want to make less money off of people?
I mean, especially when they're the one instance where they absolutely don't have to.
Right.
But again, I don't mean to play that super capitalist card on that one.
Cut it off, and no one's in that domicile for 4 or 5 months or whatever. They're not making any money.
Yeah, but it doesn't cost them any money either. They're not providing anything. Their cost of they cut the line off at the street. That line's already out there. So it doesn't cost them anything. They're not spending. They're not putting 25 cents in to get 0 back. They're putting 0 in to get 0 back.
Right.
Where if
would they rather make 0 or make money?
Well, they'd rather make money, but
okay.
They'd rather not waste money either. Well, I mean, what we're asking here is that they put 25 cents in and get 20 back. That's what we're asking for, theoretically, assuming that their pricing structure makes communal sense. Assuming their pricing structure makes communal sense, what exceptions for low-income households or some lowered rate for a low-income household is that they're going to go from making 50 cents on 25 cents in cost to making 25 cents on 25 cents in cost. They're not making any money. But they have at least direct money. But they have costs in keeping the externals up. And they have expectation they have to make somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know.
My thought was maybe they could find some kind of intermediary, some kind of government assistance program that, can get that household set up with some kind of energy auditor and be like, hey, what's causing the most energy here? Let's take a look at this. Like, okay, it's literally 90% of your heat and AC loss of your windows.
Right. Or
let's see if we can find you a program.
AC and
that too, yeah.
Again, I'm good with the premise of what you're pitching. I just don't know that that's the intent in the conversation. We just want lower rates because we can't afford it.
I don't think I'm necessarily asking for lower rates.
I mean, that's what the fucking headline said, if I'm right. Let me go back and look at it. Advocacy urging KUB to end utility disconnections and lower rates for... Advocates urging KUB to end utility disconnection and lower utility costs.
Okay.
Again, I don't know. And again, this is the weirdism. Like this is one that I can't rationalize a utility. Like I can't. It doesn't. My business brain doesn't function trying to rationalize how utilities work.
All right. So you're getting mad at something that you admittedly don't fully understand.
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
I'm getting mad at trying to understand it, but it's like I can't. I mean, again, let's assume KUB is a good.
What would AC say if he was here?
It's more complicated, but my point is that like, well, which I don't believe personally, but let's take the benefit of the doubt and say that they're a good faith actor in this conversation.
Right.
Why? It doesn't make sense. Even if I put on the assuming they're doing good work and assuming they're good people and kind of shit, which I don't necessarily believe or agree with. I don't know. How do I just don't, it just doesn't make sense. Like I don't like, again, going back to the needs and, going back to that needs kind of conversation, if it's a need, we should be okay with it being a significant cost.
And that's one pitfall that a lot of people fall into, is not prioritizing needs versus wants. That's why a lot of people just put shit on their credit card.
But so we should subsidize that and make it okay despite. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's making the grand assumption that low income, that's all they're doing.
I'm
just talking about people in general.
And I'm not saying that all low income people are doing that either, but how do we justify the conversation? How do we make it so that the logic of the needs and wants is the priority? Do we make exception?
I mean, I'm assuming to qualify for some of these government things that do this, that help you out with, that do. That do these things to help out, subsidize people, to help with their rental assistance, or getting a ride to and from work, and et cetera, that you have to qualify for that. And it's not just putting it only makes so much money. I'm assuming they would make them make sure, like, well, hey, what are you spending money on? Like, what's costing you so much money? Let's look at your financials.
And this is where I get mixed up in my own mental problems here. It's like they don't, at least in ones that I understand, like food stamps doesn't care if you're buying Oreos or a loaf of bread. I mean, that's because Nabisco's lobbying to make Nabisco products food stamps eligible, but that's a whole separate thing.
Well, that would put the policing on the grocery stores or the bodegas or whatever.
It'd be very simple to make food stamps only for fresh foods.
I would assume logistically that would be really hard to differentiate that. I mean, it's possible to do it electronically in the SKU system of grocery stores.
No, it's because
have
Nabisco
it being a qualifying product versus a non-qualifying product.
Nabisco and Pepsi and Coke and everybody else, all the big players in the game that sell the shittiest, worst foods, lobbied it to make it eligible.
No, I don't know this for a fact, but
it's a fact.
It's not surprising, but
I'm just saying, like, if they're not. I mean, the systems that at least the systems that I understand of it are not in place where they're prioritizing proper action from the individual. And again, like my core principle is like, no, you shouldn't. If we're going to put a thing in place that says, hey, you're down on your luck, you need some help, here's some food assistance. I'm not going to tell you what food to fucking eat. I'm just going to tell you here's some food assistance. Like, I agree with that in principle, but that's not. I mean, that one of the few things that goes the way I want to is the food stamps program, which it still sucks. They're not doing that. They're not doing it in a way that is in actual benefit to the individual that they're trying to help.
I don't know if it's where they hope that most people are using it wisely, in hopes that it's doing the greater good for the greater amount of people, but I don't know if it would be that much more costly for them to make sure that everything was being purchased more healthily.
I mean, it goes back to the California homelessness situation. $1 billion is their budget for homelessness this year. They're not fixing it. The money is spent. The money is spent to keep the programs alive.
It's hard to gauge how worse things would have gotten if you hadn't, because then you just kind of go down the rabbit hole of just it's a numbers game.
I get what you're saying, but I can't. The bureaucracy corrupts automatically. That's what they do. It's just the game. That's what bureaucracy does by default. It's a perverse incentives game. You can't incentivize a bureaucracy, especially on a low income need issue, that doesn't turn into, well, we can sustain this as whatever department of shitty utilities. And we're here to help people make sure they can pay their utilities or whatever. The people that are receiving the goods on it, they might get a little bit of help. They might get a little bit through it. It might get them another week. It might get them another year, whatever. But at the end of the day, all that's really happening is the bureaucracy is getting fed, and the people that administer all the little this, that, and the other, they have jobs. And if that's what we want, if we want a bureaucracy, a society where everybody works for the government, okay, that's a good way to get, people jobs, I guess.
I mean, that's been an issue for a lot of, nonprofit, major, international, health aid companies. Talk about, like the Feed the Africa Foundation or whatever.
Right, because if they do a good job of it, then the people that are hired to be the bureaucrats lose their jobs. And so why would they help them?
I mean, as far as the money not going to where it's supposed to be going to where a lot of it is going to that administrative cost.
Right. And as an administrator, you have this weird perverse incentive where it's like, well, if I actually do my job right, I lose my job.
I don't think it's that quite malicious, but okay.
I don't say it's malicious, but it's just built into the system.
How else would it be?
What do you mean, how else would it be? How else
if they're working for an organization that is there to feed the hungry or whatever, you're saying they're only not doing their job in order to stay in their job to continue to make money. How could that not be malicious?
How do you explain that they can never succeed in the job? Maybe that's
because it's ending poverty and ending hunger is not exactly of just let's throw some money at it. It's not an easy thing to just completely fix.
How do we not?
I don't think it's anything that 5 years from now we can just wipe our hands clean and it's all going to be over with. Like it's an ever-ending goal.
But are there statistical gains? Are we at a lower percentage of whatever it is that they're supposed to be out there to do?
Yes. The numbers on worldwide poverty have gone down. The numbers on worldwide hunger have gone down. The worldwide population is still going up, but from what numbers I've seen, they are going down.
All right.
It is getting better, whether it's through health aid or the individual countries themselves changing the way they do things as far as food distribution or whatever. There's so many factors that go into trying to end poverty, trying to end hunger.
Okay.
I mean, that, not to quote AC, but it is a very complicated issue. There's no easy, simple fix to poverty, homelessness, and hunger. That is something that has plagued the human race ever since we've been around.
Okay. I don't have the stats. I cannot reference specifics.
Famines happen due to ecological and just weather-related issues quite often.
So new topic. Sorry, not that I don't know. Anyway, Ball and Sager had a guy on who's a traveling reporter. He's doing some stuff in Wisconsin, and so basically there's a Smithyfield pig farms. Smithfield.
Yeah, maybe Smithfield.
Smithfield pig farms. They're trying to put this giant pig farm in somewhere in Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, whatever. And everybody in that county is like, fuck no. State law says too bad. We can't undo that.
And so contract in place or something? Or?
Not contract, but it's just kind of like, it's within zoning regulations, whatever, and you as a community, as much as you as a community are opposed to it, it's within the legal things that are going on right now. You can't do anything about it.
Didn't it have to pass city or county approval?
No, apparently, apparently the city or the county rather got letters from the state that said it would be a federal crime if you voted to approve if you voted to approve restricting this company from coming in to do this work, it would be a federal crime. Don't quite understand the specifics of that.
Yeah, that sounds kind of weird.
But what the reality is that it's this question of governance in Wisconsin, and I think it's the same here in Tennessee. It's probably the same in most states. It's the superiority doctrine of which government body has the most say in a situation. And when it comes down to it, the federal government is the one. And that's one of the things that I kind of generally push back against in most conversations. I think, if Knox County wants to not allow something, but the state of Tennessee wants it and the federal government wants it, too bad, Knox County, you got to deal with it. And that's kind of what's happening in some of these rural counties. And
there's only certain situations that federal law supersedes.
I don't know. That's what I'm confused on, I guess, in the specifics of it. But it'd be an interesting investigation in Tennessee on how certain things would play out if we as Knox County said no. Like ballot items said no. But it's within state law and it's within this, that, and the other, and it happens anyway. So it was an interesting story as far as especially with the state government sending a letter to the local government saying that it's a federal crime if you take action against what's happening.
Don't allow.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to staff it somehow.
Yeah, but apparently it's not like, for the population of the county versus the amount of people that could possibly work there, and for the amount of damage it would do both environmentally and economically to everything else that goes on in that county, what little else goes on in that county, it would kill the county. That's the story, at least.
If they didn't allow it?
If they do allow it, it'll kill the county.
Oh.
And so the county's like, no, get this thing out of here. We don't want it. And the state said, too bad. And it's a federal crime for you elected officials to do anything about it.
Yeah, but I'm saying that factory would have to staff the people. If there's no one to staff it, you can't function.
Right, but if there's 800 people there and the staffing is 20, what happens to those other 780 people?
I'm confused.
What do you mean?
Are we assuming there's that many people that are just there unemployed waiting for something to happen?
It's the other economic things that go on there. It's whatever. I don't know what else is going on in the county, but basically it's like a third of the county is the farmland that they're trying to buy or that they bought. And so the handful of other farms there can't functionally compete in the local market because that local market will take out of that farm too. So if I have a hog farm that has like 100 head and they have a 10,000 head hog farm.
So it's a farm or a processing plant?
No, it's a hog farm, which apparently 90% is going to China anyway. So I don't know.
That was one thing I learned recently when they were kind of talking about with the whole weather things over the past few years, that the U.S. relies upon winter wheat from Australia. We were talking about with the droughts, I guess, that have happened in Africa and other places over the past, 5 to 10 years.
Right.
That, during the northern hemisphere, during our winter, we're relying upon the southern hemisphere being during their kind of summer growing season.
Right.
And relying upon them for wheat. Like last year and the last couple of years, Australia had been hit really hard with droughts and just shitty weather. So, that was one reason that raised some of the wheat prices, I guess, during our winter months when we were relying upon other areas when we weren't growing it.
It makes sense, but never really thought about it.
Yeah, it was one thing I hadn't really thought of either.
That's one of the few things about isolationism that doesn't work.
That's one thing that I've kind of realized to push back more upon recently. It's if you can do everything yourself, more power to you. But the way the world market is now,
there's ways to do it, but it becomes a cultural system that has to be in place,
right?
Which is not.
It's we should be isolation. It's well, where are you going to get your precious metals? And it's we should start making our own cell phones. It's we don't have the lithium,
right?
It's literally there's no lithium in America. I don't believe.
Yeah, apparently there's a good bit in Mexico. In Venezuela, I think.
Canada has a lot of natural resources. A lot of the world's uranium comes out of Australia and some other parts. But there's a lot of things that America has, but there's a lot of things that America doesn't have that we rely upon other places for.
In the modern culture of
we
all
talked about
the
cheap steel that was coming out of China or whatever. The U.S. has steel, but apparently I guess it's a higher grade or whatever and costs more. And we're no, we want to buy that Chinese steel because it's cheaper.
Right. because we don't need the higher grade for whatever we're making.
Right. We don't care to make cheap shit. If we make cheap shit, then you guys get to buy more of it.
Yeah, fuck it. Well, I mean, we're a disposable society in general.
True.
All right. You want to call it there? Let's do a short one.
All right.
I'll tag on AC if I can get him to come in on Sunday morning. Half show. Half show. I'm coming in on the backside. Just doing the outro for you guys. Apologize for the short one. My tummy went crazy on something. But anyway, we did a show. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Find our website, almostinagreement.com. Go there and get all the episodes, or on any of your favorite major podcast providers. While you're in these places, please like, share, friend, follow, subscribe, whatever the term is. Give good stuff, good 5, 6, 12-star reviews, whatever you can get. And tell your friends about us. We're going to keep working through it. We got some more city council candidates coming up. And we're looking forward to the 22 ballot. I read this morning that there is a state rep that is introducing a ballot item for the 22 election that's going to include medical decriminalization and or full legal marijuana in the state of Tennessee. But it's more of a poll than it is an actual ballot item. But anyway, we'll talk more about that later. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. We appreciate everybody. Fourth Creek Brewfest went great. Look out for the repeat next year. Thanks.